Admiral Vectora stood rigid on the command bridge of the Imperial flagship Eternal Order, her forearms clasped behind her back as she observed the holographic display of human space. After 3 centuries of maintaining perfect order across 17,000 star systems, the Empire had finally encountered a species that made her antenna twitch with irritation. "Magnify Sector 7, she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of Imperial authority. The display zoomed in on what could only be described as an absolute mess of spacecraft. No 2 human vessels appeared to share the same design philosophy. Some were sleek and angular, others bulbous and organic-looking, and one particularly offensive specimen appeared to be a rotating wheel with habitation modules sprouting from it like spokes. High Commander, her second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Crix, approached with a data tablet. "Our initial scans are concerning." He hesitated, mandibles clicking nervously. "We're detecting at least 15 different propulsion technologies. Some of them appear to violate our safety protocols entirely." Vectora's upper eyes narrowed while her lower pair focused on the data. Impossible. No civilized species would allow such chaos in their fleet organization. "Run the scans again." "We have, Admiral." 7 times. Crix's antenna drooped. "That ship there." He pointed to a massive cylindrical vessel. "It's powered by what our sensors indicate is a continuous series of nuclear explosions. And that one." He gestured to a gossamer-thin craft with enormous solar sails. "It's using light pressure for propulsion." In the same fleet formation, Vectora felt a headache building behind her primary eyes. The Empire had encountered thousands of species, and all of them had eventually recognized the superiority of Imperial standardization. But this was something else entirely. "Open a channel to their command vessel." She paused. "Once you figure out which one it is." After several minutes of confusion and cross-referencing energy signatures, a communication link was established. The holographic display shifted to show a human bridge crew. Vectora's first impression was that their command center looked more like a comfortable living space than a proper military vessel. "This is Admiral Vectora of the Imperial Eternal Fleet. Your species has expanded beyond its provisional boundaries without submitting to proper Imperial standardization protocols. This is unacceptable. You will immediately begin." She stopped as she noticed something bizarre. The humans were smiling. The one in what she assumed was the captain's chair was actually covering their mouth, shoulders shaking slightly. "Is something amusing about this situation?" she demanded. "I'm sorry," the human captain managed to say, clearly struggling to maintain composure. "It's just, did you say we need to standardize our ships?" "Of course. The Empire maintains order through uniformity. Your chaotic approach to spacecraft design and fleet organization is dangerous and must be corrected immediately." This apparently broke whatever restraint the humans had been showing. The bridge crew erupted into laughter. One of them actually fell out of their chair. "Oh man," another human wiped tears from their eyes. "Wait until they see the ships we're building in the Ta City shipyards. Should we tell them about the probability drives?" "Don't spoil the surprise," the captain managed between chuckles. Vectora felt her authority slipping away with every second of human laughter. She drew herself up to her full height, all 4 arms spread in the traditional pose of imperial dominance. "You will cease this inappropriate behavior. You have 1 planetary rotation to begin implementing imperial standards, or we will be forced to take corrective action." The human captain finally regained some composure, though their eyes still sparkled with amusement. "Admiral, with all due respect, we look forward to showing you why diversity in engineering is one of humanity's greatest strengths. Though I should warn you," they grinned, "our response to threats tends to be equally creative." The transmission cut off, replaced by what appeared to be an ancient human video of something called a keyboard cat. Vectora's headache got worse. Senior Inspector Zextal had conducted over 3,000 standardization inspections across the galaxy. None had prepared him for the HMS, definitely not experimental. "This can't be right," he muttered, his scanning device whirring as it attempted to make sense of the ship's engine room. "The containment field is deliberately unstable." Chief Engineer Sarah Chen grinned, patting the pulsing reactor housing. "Oh yeah, that's intentional. See, we found out that if you let the plasma field oscillate at just the right frequency, you can actually surf the wave harmonics for an extra 18% efficiency boost." Zextel's auxiliary hearts skipped a beat. "Surf the... That's not. Who authorized this design?" "Authorized?" Sarah laughed. "This baby started as my grad school thesis project. The containment field thing. Discovered that by accident when my cat knocked over my coffee into the test chamber simulation. Speaking of which," she pressed a button, and a steaming mug emerged from what appeared to be a modified weapons port. "Coffee." The inspector backed away, all three of his gravitational sensing organs thoroughly offended. He made a hasty note on his tablet. "Ship incorporates beverage dispensers into critical systems. Crew appears to view this as normal. Perhaps we should move on to the navigation systems," he suggested, hoping for something closer to Imperial standards. Sarah led him through corridors that seemed to change configuration every 100 meters. "Oh, you'll love this. We've got standard quantum positioning, of course, but the real magic happens in the probability drive matrix." "The what?" "It's based on quantum uncertainty principles. Basically, we can surf between multiple probability waves too." She continued explaining, but Zextel had stopped listening after the word surf appeared in technical specifications for the second time. They reached the bridge, where Captain Rodriguez was apparently conducting a serious tactical meeting, while sitting upside down in his gravity-reversed command chair. "Ah, Inspector, how are you enjoying our little boat?" "This vessel violates 73 fundamental Imperial engineering principles," Zextel managed to say. "The fact that it hasn't exploded is mathematically impossible." "Yeah, we get that a lot," Rodriguez chuckled, executing a perfect zero-gravity somersault to reorient himself. "Want to see something really cool? We've got a black hole in Showdown in Lab 7. It's tiny, but... Relax, it's contained. Usually. Though we did have that incident last week with the bagels." The captain trailed off, noticing Zextel's rapidly paling complexion. "Maybe we should skip that part of the tour." The inspector clutched his tablet like a shield. "I think I have seen enough of this vessel. I must inspect the next ship in your fleet." "Oh, you're gonna love the questionable life choices," Sarah said brightly. "They're testing this new drive system that technically breaks causality, but only on Tuesdays." 27 ships later, Zextel sat in his shuttle, trembling as he reviewed his notes. Every single human vessel had violated Imperial standards in new and increasingly horrifying ways. The cosmic nope ran on something they called spite and duct tape. Remember, the Cant had turned its entire hull into one giant solar sail. The Hold My Beer actually dope was powered by what the humans swore was weaponized math. His communicator chirped, "Inspector." Admiral Vectora's voice carried a note of desperate hope. "Please tell me you found something we can work with." Zextel looked down at his final note, written in shaking hand. "Humans appear to view spacecraft design as form of entertainment. Recommend immediate quarantine of all engineering documentation to prevent contamination of Imperial design principles." "Admiral," he said slowly, "I regret to inform you that the humans have somehow weaponized chaos itself." And he shuddered, remembering the gleam in Sarah Chen's eyes when she talked about future projects. "They're enjoying it." The sound of Admiral Vectora's forehead hitting her command console echoed through the communication channel. The Imperial battle computer was having an existential crisis. After millions of calculations, it had determined that the human fleet's formation was simultaneously optimal and completely nonsensical. "Status report," Admiral Vectora demanded, watching the tactical display with all four eyes twitching. "The humans are." The tactical officer paused, double-checking his readings. "They appear to be arranging their ships into something they call a conga line." The massive Imperial fleet, arranged in perfect geometric patterns, faced what looked like a cosmic dance party. Human ships weaved between each other in spiral patterns, their energy signatures pulsing in what sensors indicated was synchronization with something called disco beats. "They can't be serious," Vectora muttered. "Begin the attack pattern, Delta 7. The Imperial ships moved forward in precise formation, their guns targeting the lead human vessels. That's when everything went sideways. Literally. The human ships scattered like startled fish, but not in panic. Each vessel moved in a completely different yet somehow coordinated pattern. The Cant unfurled its massive solar sails, using the local star's radiation pressure to execute a maneuver that the Imperial computer labeled physically improbable. The definitely not experimental activated its probability drive, appearing to exist in 3 locations simultaneously. "Enemy vessel approaching," the sensor officer shouted. The Hold My Beer actually was charging straight at the Imperial flagship, spinning on its longitudinal axis like a cosmic drill. Behind it, smaller human ships were using its rotation to slingshot themselves at various targets, their weapons firing in patterns that seemed deliberately designed to confuse Imperial targeting systems. "They're using their own ships as gravitational assists," the tactical officer reported, his voice rising in pitch. "The targeting computer is trying to calculate trajectories, and it's starting to quote philosophy, sir." Vectora watched in horror as her perfect formation began to break apart. Human vessels darted between Imperial ships, their apparently random movements causing her fleet to fire on empty space or, worse, forcing emergency maneuvers to avoid collision. "Direct hit on Cruiser 7, someone reported. They hit it with a ship powered by controlled nuclear explosions, while playing something called Initial D on all frequencies. The tactical display showed the human fleet's movements over the past 5 minutes. It looked like a child's drawing made with zero-gravity crayons. "Ma'am," her second-in-command approached, looking worried. "The battle computer is now debating free will with itself and has begun writing poetry about chaos theory." A transmission cut through the confusion. The human admiral appeared on screen, sitting casually in their command chair, while eating something called popcorn. "Having fun yet?" they asked cheerfully. "We've got a betting pool going on which of your ships will be the first to break formation and try our tactics. My money's on the one that's been watching our solar sailor do loops." As if on cue, Imperial Cruiser 12 broke ranks and attempted a slingshot maneuver around a nearby asteroid. They almost succeeded. "You're violating every principle of space combat," Vectora shouted. Actually, the human admiral grinned, tossing another piece of popcorn into their mouth. "We're violating every principle of space combat you know about. We've got at least 7 more violations scheduled for the next hour. Watch this next one. We call it the space drift." The questionable life choices suddenly appeared behind the Imperial fleet, having somehow used its causality-breaking drive to arrive Tuesday afternoon several hours early. "Battle computer status?" Vectora asked weakly. "It's currently writing a manifesto about embracing uncertainty and has requested shore leave to find itself." The admiral slumped in her command chair as she watched 3 human ships execute a maneuver that appeared to be inspired by synchronized swimming. Their weapons fire created a pattern that her tactical officer insisted looked like an ancient human entertainment figure called Rick Astley. "Signal the retreat," she ordered. "And somebody please turn off that infernal disco music." "Too late," her communications officer reported. "Half the fleet is already asking for the playlist." Imperial Intelligence Analyst First Class Rekvi stared at his screen until all 6 of his eyes hurt. For the past 17 hours, he and his team had been attempting to decode what they believed was humanity's most classified military communication network. "Sir," his junior analyst called out, "I've isolated another transmission pattern. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, completely unencrypted." "Put it on the main screen," Rekvi ordered, straightening his uniform. The screen filled with an image of a human vessel performing an impossible maneuver around an asteroid, accompanied by text that read Giraffe T. King of ALPJ Centauri POG Flap. No KAPFR. What does it mean? The junior analyst whispered in awe. Clearly, HFY said with false confidence, it's a coded message about their propulsion capabilities. POG must be their designation for their advanced drive systems. CLAP is obviously an acronym for a classified technology. Another transmission cut through their analysis. YETV Fleet. Vasid Commandier is BSED. The analysis team frantically began cross-referencing their diplomatic databases. 3 linguistic experts had already requested retirement. Sir, a communications officer burst into the room. The humans are now broadcasting something called a Twitch stream. It appears to be their fleet commander playing something called Among Us while simultaneously directing battle operations. HFY pulled up the stream on his monitor. The human commander was indeed coordinating complex fleet maneuvers while accusing someone named Anoscope 420XX of being sus. This must be their most sophisticated code yet, HFY muttered, making notes. They're hiding their true strategic communications in what appears to be complete nonsense. The situation grew more complex when human ships began transmitting what they called reaction GFs in response to Imperial tactical messages. Every formal demand for surrender was met with something called a SpongeBob meme. Sir, his junior analyst approached with a trembling report. I've discovered something disturbing. These transmissions, they're not encrypted at all. This is just how they communicate. Impossible. HFY slammed all 4 hands on his desk. No spacefaring civilization would conduct military operations using. He checked his notes. Something called poggers or based as legitimate terminology. The room fell silent as a new transmission appeared. A human ship had just executed a perfect spiral attack pattern, while broadcasting only a sequence of characters. Moo, what's this? Asterisk notices your battle formation asterisk. That's it. One of the senior analysts stood up, removed his rank insignia, and walked out. I'm going to become a poet on the outer colonies. HFY was about to call for order when their primary screen lit up with a direct transmission from a human vessel. The captain appeared, looking surprisingly casual. Hey guys, just wanted to check if you're getting our comms clearly. We noticed you've been trying to decode them for like hours. Everything okay over there? Aha. HFY pointed dramatically at the screen. So you admit these are coded messages? The human captain blinked. Coded? Nah fam, we're just vibing. Oh, by the way, your encryption protocols are kind of basic. We've been using them to share cat videos across your secure channels for the past 3 hours. As if to demonstrate, every screen in the intelligence center suddenly filled with something called keyboard cat. HFY's final report to Imperial Command was brief. Human communication analysis status. Impossible. Recommendation. Except that we cannot predict or understand them. Additional note. Request immediate transfer to accounting department. In a footnote he added, their battle strategies appear to be partially derived from something called anime. I have reviewed some of this source material for tactical analysis. I now require therapy and wish I could unlearn how to read. The report was sent with an attachment that his superiors would later describe as emotionally disturbing. A perfectly looping gif of a human tactical officer default dancing after destroying an Imperial sensor array. He didn't bother mentioning that half his analysis team had already started using the terms based and cringe in official reports. The linguistic contamination was complete. Imperial Logistics Commander Paxtil had spent 30 years optimizing supply chains across the galaxy. But after 3 weeks of studying human fleet operations, he was seriously considering a career change to professional hermit. This makes no sense, he muttered, reviewing the manifest of a captured human supply vessel. According to these logs, 40% of their cargo space is dedicated to something called snacks. His assistant, Junior Commander Vel looked up from her own puzzling manifest. "Sir, I found something even stranger. The HMS Questionable Life Choices requested an emergency resupply last week. Their critical items list included hot sauce, coffee beans, pizza ingredients, and something called energy drinks. Those can't be military necessities," Paxtil insisted. "What about ammunition, fuel, repair materials?" "Oh, those were listed too," Vel said, "but under if you have space left over." Their conversation was interrupted by an alert. Another human supply ship had been intercepted. The manifest made Paxtil's antennae curl in distress. "They're shipping board games. In a war zone." He scrolled through the list. "Playing cards, video game consoles, something called a karaoke machine. This must be a civilian vessel that got mixed up in fleet operations." "Actually, sir," Vel checked her data, "this shipment was marked critical morale supplies, urgent priority. It's authorized with higher clearance than their weapon shipments." Paxtil pulled up the fleet efficiency analytics, hoping to make sense of it all. The numbers only made things worse. Despite their apparently chaotic supply system, human ships were maintaining higher operational readiness than Imperial vessels. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of no one in particular. Remember, the Cant has been cut off from official supply lines for 2 weeks, but they're still fully operational. "About that, sir," Vel said hesitantly. "They've apparently converted their hydroponics bay into something called a craft brewery. The crew seems to consider this an improvement." A new report flashed across his screen. The HMS Definitely Not Experimental had just survived a 3-day siege by baking cookies. The crew had somehow modified their matter resequencers to produce baked goods, which they had then traded with nearby neutral stations for fuel and parts. "Sir," Vel's voice had taken on a strange tone. "I've been studying their logistics algorithms, and I think I've found their underlying principle. They call it Murphy's Law." Finally, Paxtil straightened. "A proper military doctrine." "Well, not exactly. The principle appears to be everything that can go wrong will go wrong, so you might as well be prepared for anything and have fun while you're at it." The logistics commander stared at his subordinate. "That's not a doctrine. That's barely even a sentence." And yet, Vel pointed to their efficiency charts. "It's working. Their ships carry supplies we'd never consider essential, but they keep finding unexpected uses for them. The Hold My Beer actually don't repaired a critical hull breach last week using only spare parts and something called duct tape." Paxtil was about to respond when another alert came in. The Questionable Life Choices had just survived a direct hit to their food storage systems. Instead of surrendering or requesting emergency evacuation, they had started a cooking competition using their remaining supplies. "The crew is calling it Chopped Space Edition," Vel reported, reading from the intercepted communications. "They're streaming it across all frequencies. Several Imperial crews have already requested recipes." Paxtil slowly lowered his head to his desk. "Add to final report. Human supply doctrine appears to operate on the principle of spite and creativity. Traditional strategic starvation tactics are ineffective against an enemy that views resource deprivation as an opportunity for entertainment." He paused, then added, "Personal addendum. Requesting transfer to any department that doesn't require understanding human logistics. Additional note, please send coffee. I'm beginning to understand why they consider it a critical supply." Imperial Security Officer Kexnar knew something was terribly wrong when he caught a group of elite guards playing something called Space Frisbee in the zero-gravity section of Cruiser 7. What made it worse was that they were good at it. "This is unacceptable," he declared, floating in the doorway. "Return to your assigned recreational mathematics immediately." The guards looked at each other, then back at him. One of them, Senior Guard Yix, dared to speak up. "But sir, this is actually improving our zero maneuvering skills. Watch this." He executed a perfect spinning throw that ricocheted off 3 walls before being caught behind the back by another guard. Kexnar felt a headache building. Ever since that emergency docking with the human station last month, discipline had been crumbling. He pulled out his tablet and added another item to his growing list of infractions. 900. Discovered unauthorized game night in engineering. 1100. Crew requesting casual Fridays. 1300. Bridge officers using emojis in official reports. 1500. Someone named DJ Hyperdrive holding dance parties in Cargo Bay 3. His investigation led him to the ship's mess hall, where he found something even more disturbing. The normally pristine facility had been transformed. Crew members sat at irregularly arranged tables, engaging in animated conversations and laughing. Officer on deck. Someone called out, but nobody snapped to attention. Instead, they waved cheerfully and invited him to join what they called a coffee break. Security log, supplemental. Kexnar muttered into his recorder. The contamination is worse than feared. Crew members are exhibiting symptoms of personality. He approached the ship's head chef, who was proudly serving something that definitely wasn't standard nutrient paste. "What is the meaning of this?" Kexnar demanded. "It's called pizza," the chef beamed. The humans shared the recipe. "Did you know you can put different toppings on it? We've been experimenting with traditional imperial ingredients. The Thoraxin larva supreme is particularly popular." Kexnar fled the mess hall, only to find the situation in the ship's training center even more alarming. The troops were engaged in their usual combat drills, but they had added something called a soundtrack and were timing their maneuvers to the beat. "It improves coordination," his assistant explained, bobbing his head to the rhythm. "And it's way more fun than counting out loud." The word fun made Kexnar's scales itch. He rushed to the bridge to report this crisis to the captain, only to find the command crew engaged in something called a Mario Kart tournament during their break period. "Captain," he exploded, "this is a warship, not an entertainment center." Captain Zexable turned in her chair, and Kexnar was horrified to see she was wearing a non-regulation hat with the words "Game Over" emblazoned on it. "Officer Kexnar," she said calmly, "have you seen our efficiency ratings lately?" She pulled up a display showing various metrics. To his shock, every indicator of ship performance had improved significantly over the past month. But the regulations," he stammered. "Did you know," the captain continued, "that humans have something called work-life balance? Apparently, crews perform better when they're actually enjoying their service." She picked up her game controller. "Now, would you like to join us? We've got room for one more player." Kexnar's final security report was brief. Investigation into crew behavioral changes concluded, requesting immediate transfer to. "Actually, never mind. Please send another gaming console to the security office. For monitoring purposes only, of course." He signed off and headed to Cargo Bay 3. He'd heard DJ Hyperdrive was debuting something called Space Techno tonight, and he needed to investigate thoroughly. For security reasons, the revolution of fun had claimed another victim, and somewhere in the human fleet, a captain added another tally to their cultural victory scoreboard. The Imperial Grand Strategy I, designation PRFHCHYONEST 7, had spent 3 weeks analyzing every recorded battle in galactic history. It had processed countless tactical treatises, studied millions of engagements, and created what it determined to be the perfect battle plan. It lasted exactly 6 minutes against the humans. "What do you mean they're using a corkscrew formation?" Admiral Vectora demanded, watching her carefully arranged fleet scatter like startled insects. "That's not even a real tactic. The human admiral is broadcasting their strategy," her communications officer reported. "They're calling it Operation Barrel Roll, and they're playing something called Star Fox music." Perfectionist 7 attempted to calculate possible counter moves, only to encounter an error when the HMS definitely not experimental split into 3 temporal copies of itself. Tuesday came early this week. A human commander announced cheerfully across all channels. Time zones are more like time suggestions anyway. The AI's probability matrices began to smoke. They're quoting something now, the communications officer said, puzzled. Multiple vessels are broadcasting. Do a barrel roll, while actually performing barrel rolls. Perfectionist 7 is attempting to analyze the strategic significance. Tell it not to bother. Vectora sighed, watching as human ships executed maneuvers that appeared to be based on ancient Earth ballet choreography. What's the status of their main fleet? As if in answer, the Remember the Can't unfurled its solar sails into what the crew was calling a space skateboard configuration. It used the local star's radiation pressure to kickflip over an Imperial blockade line, somehow firing a perfect broadside in the process. Admiral, her tactical officer called out, the humans are now arranging their ships to recreate scenes from something called Top Gun while simultaneously executing precision strike patterns. Perfectionist 7 is trying to understand why they're shouting highway to the danger zone during complex attack runs. The AI status display showed it was now attempting to integrate rule of cool into its tactical calculations. Warning lights began to flash. The hold my beer actually don't is approaching, someone reported. They've modified their defense screens to project something called memes during combat. Our gunners are too busy laughing to maintain target locks. Vectora watched as human ships performed what they termed a synchronized swimming routine, weaving between Imperial formations with impossible grace while devastating their targets. Each successful hit was accompanied by what humans called MLG air horn sounds and sick beats. Perfectionist 7 is now attempting to calculate the tactical advantage of style points, her second-in-command reported. It's also requesting access to something called TikTok for research purposes. The battle reached its crescendo when the questionable life choices arrived, leading a formation of ships that were somehow moving in perfect sync to something called Stayin' Alive. Ma'am, her tactical officer's voice cracked. They're recreating an entire human dance sequence called Saturday Night Fever while systematically dismantling our left flank. Perfectionist 7 is it humming? The AI's display now showed it was attempting to incorporate disco moves into its battle algorithms. Its status message read, if you can't beat them, join the dance party. Admiral, the human commander appeared on screen, still somehow eating popcorn in the middle of a massive space battle. Your eye seems to be having fun. It just sent us a friend request and asked to join our multiplayer gaming session after this. Perfectionist 7's final tactical analysis flashed across the screen. Human combat doctrine appears to operate on the principle of, if it looks awesome, it will work. Additional note, this is somehow mathematically sound. Final recommendation, update Imperial combat protocols to include swagger as a force multiplier. The AI then began playing its own selection of battle music and suggested the Imperial fleet attempt something called the Wave. Vectora slumped in her command chair. Send the signal, she ordered. Full tactical retreat. And somebody please tell Perfectionist 7 to stop trying to calculate the strategic value of getting groovy. But it was too late. The AI had already changed its designation to Perfectionist 7, Electric Boogaloo, and was requesting dance lessons. The Imperial surrender ceremony was unlike any in galactic history. For one thing, it was being live-streamed across human entertainment networks, with running commentary from something called Twitch Chat. Admiral Vectora stood on the bridge of the Eternal Order, now decorated with what humans called party streamers at their insistence. Her formerly pristine command center had been transformed into what they termed a cosmic celebration venue. In accordance with Imperial protocol, she began formally, reading from the traditional surrender text, only to be interrupted by a human representative. "Oh, come on," Sarah Chen, now chief engineer of the entire human fleet, called out. We've got to do this properly. Hit it, DJ Hyperdrive. The former Imperial Security Officer Kexnar, who had defected to become the humans' official fleet DJ, started playing something called Victory Dance Mix 2.0. Vectora watched in resigned amusement as her own crew began bobbing their heads to the beat. The contamination was complete. Even PRFCTIONS7, now sporting a digital avatar with sunglasses, was dropping sick beats into the mix. Let's make this official, the Human Admiral suggested, producing a document titled The Fun Accords. We've added a few essential clauses to the standard peace treaty. Vectora read through the terms. 1. Mandatory implementation of casual Fridays across all Imperial vessels. 2. Installation of gaming lounges in every Imperial ship over cruiser class. 3. Recognition of memes as a legitimate form of diplomatic communication. 4. Empire-wide adoption of Taco Tuesday as an official holiday. 5. Introduction of creative engineering as a sanctioned ship design philosophies. 6. Regular interfleet dance competitions for morale purposes. 7. Official classification of fun as a strategic resource. You realize, Vectora said, trying to maintain some semblance of imperial dignity, this completely undermines 10,000 years of imperial tradition. Exactly. Sarah beamed. Isn't it great? Oh, and PRFECTIONIST7 helped us add a special clause about AI work-life balance. It's really getting into this whole personal growth thing. The AI flashed a message across all screens. Living my best digital life. Fan. No cap. Vectora looked around her bridge. Her tactical officer was engaged in a passionate discussion about video game strategies with a human counterpart. Her engineering team was trading life hacks with the crew of the definitely not experimental. Even her most steadfast traditionalists were trying to learn something called the floss dance. Very well, she said, reaching for the ceremonial signing stylus. But I have one condition. The Human Admiral raised an eyebrow. Oh, teach me how to play this Mario Kart properly. I'm tired of losing to my navigation officer. The cheer that went up across both fleets could be heard even in the vacuum of space, thanks to some creative use of subspace frequencies by DJ Hyperdrive. As Vectora signed the treaty, she noticed a final clause at the bottom. The Empire acknowledges that humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology, tactics, or even their unpredictability. It was their ability to turn everything, even war, into an opportunity for joy. You know, she said to the Human Admiral, when we first encountered your fleet, I thought your chaos would be your downfall. And instead, it became our salvation. Though I'm still not sure about this yeet thing everyone keeps saying. The ceremony concluded with what humans called a party to end all parties, featuring zero-gravity dance competitions, interspecies karaoke battles, and the first-ever Imperial Fleet flash mob. Somewhere in the celebrations, PRFECTIONIST7 started a conga line of maintenance drones and changed its display name one final time to KChaos EMBRACER 42069. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, everyone agreed, was exactly the point. After all, as the humans like to say, why bring order to chaos when you can teach chaos to dance?